So hey guys, today we're talking about going second decks, and specifically how, well, the concept of going second deck is pretty miserable. So let's start with some classics. So we have Psyframe, where honestly you could go first. It's just it doesn't really make a difference. You're better off going second because you get an extra card, I guess. But pretty simply put, if you're playing Psyframe and your opponent does literally nothing, well, we're going to be assuming you're playing like your Psyframe, so nothing to make Lambda or anything like that, but yeah. If your opponent never activates a card or never does anything, you can never actually summon a single monster, and therefore you can never get board presence. So yeah, nothing happens really. So that is the crux of the issue. So what if we were able to play going first? Well, then the whole point of being a going second deck becomes a moot point. So if I let's assume we don't have any restrictions on like our Starframe guys. So let's pretend going first I can special summon Gamma, no strings attached, special summon Driver, and then go ahead, make Omega or whatever, and then go into like full combo. Then why would I want to go second when I can just go first instead? Right? Seems kinda pointless. So if you have these restrictions though, we got a bit of a paradox here. So if we don't have the restriction, then why would we play this as a going second deck? But because we have these restrictions, the deck, well, the decks in general kind of suck, because if our opponents don't play, then we can't play. And the first going second deck that could OTK pretty much was just tenpai. The only big difference between specifically tenpai, Numron, and Makanko is that if you just are forced to go first and pass your turn, your opponent can in fact OTK you. But like, believe it or not, that's the only difference between tenpai and every other going second deck. So yeah, that's incredibly awkward, isn't it? Just yeah. So for example, Numron, we'll throw this in here too, and also Makanko real quick. So with Numron, you summon essentially 4 Numron gate guys, and if you do not do battle with one of your opponent's monsters, so if your opponent in theory had any monster, if I attack with one guy, this would become like, well, assuming it's like an Ash Blossom, set Ash Blossom, I attack into Ash Blossom, doubles everything. Ash Blossom's not destroyed by that battle. With this gate here, I'm going to attack again. My last 2 guys are going to be boosted to 4,000 each. So 2 more attacks. Boom, bada bing. That is going to be 8k direct damage. And well, we win. But if our opponent just passes, we can do 4k damage, and then we can make something dumb and fast. So in this case, we have 1 special summon, so we can summon like Avramax, Megaclops, Apollosa, any of those guys really. And yeah, that's it really. Not much else to say here. And then for Makanko, this deck actually had no way to do like any damage. So if you just straight up passed, like pre-support, you would literally just be staring at your opponent. Yeah. I mean, how you would OTK is essentially you would kaiju one of your opponent's monsters, and then you would attack that kaiju after you like maybe remove some stuff, like maybe Arabesque or something. And then you can attack your opponent's kaiju that you gave them. You can also return the kaiju to hand and tribute over something else. You can tribute like 2 of their monsters, or you can return 1 to hand and tribute 1 with Arabesque. I mean, it's pretty much the same. It's not that different. And then you attack that kaiju a few times, so something like 2 or 3 times. It kind of depends on the kaiju and stuff, right? But after you do that, you have game from that. But if your opponent has no monsters at all, then your monsters have 0 attack points, and the only way you can perform an OTK from here is if you have, specifically, you'll need a Mikanko monster, double-edged sword, and then you need specifically Ohime on field. So you attack double-edged sword with double-edged sword that does 4k, and then double-edged sword gets into the graveyard, and then you Ohime attach it to Ohime or your other Mikanko, and then attack with that for 8k for lethal. Now, do you have a way to search double-edged sword? Kind of. You have Mikanko Rivalry. If you control Mikanko, monster target one face of monster on the field, equip it with one equip spell from your deck that can equip to it. So you have to go like into Huli, then you grab Mikanko Rivalry, and then you can equip double-edged sword, so your opponent just gets another turn. Well, assuming they do nothing, right? So in terms of like advantage for going second, a good example of this, like this is quote unquote kind of a going second deck, I guess. We have Gem Knight, and people are playing this as a going second deck, but you know, this deck can, like, no joke, just FTK, right? And there's nothing limited here. Well, that hurts the FTK. Like, no one's even really playing the FTK, like, just in general at the moment. But if you want, this deck can just straight up FTK if it goes first, right? So there's no point in going second if you have the option to go first, in the sense that you could have literally just FTK'd your opponent and you could have been done with the game, like, done and dusted, right? But if you go second, you have to wait for your opponent to combo and all that. And what advantage do you get from going second exactly? I believe there was like one monster that has the effect where you discard it or something, and then it adds like some Gem Knight card. I think it was like either it adds like Dispersion or Brilliant Fusion or something. Yeah, that's the card we're playing for, I guess. Let's see, which one was it? Gem Knight Quartz. If your opponent controls a monster, you can discard this card, set one fusion continuous spell directly from your deck. And yeah, that's pretty much the only reason to play going second Gem Knight, mostly, I guess. Some of your big bunguses can be used to OTK like decently well. So if your opponent like straight up pass turn, you can OTK them, assuming they did literally nothing, which is kind of like tenpai quality, if you want to call it that. So what really needs to change for going second decks? Well, there must first off be an actual incentive to go second over going first, right? Because even tenpai can technically be used as a going first combo deck. Just no one does it because they're, in theory, a lot better decks for going first. So if we start with, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Hydra, grab Sangan summoning. This grabs Genroku, special summon Genroku. This dragon locks you. You can then go into Romulus, the Dragunity Link 2, and technically that's like Dragon Link combo. So you would technically use Tenpai's Dragon Link starters and just play them with Dragon Link. Essentially, but no one plays the deck like that. They would just either play purely Tenpai or purely Dragon Link. Rocket stuff, whatever. So that's kind of awkward. But alright. Incentives for going second? Well, you would need to have some sort of advantage, but like there's a problem. The game partially has like an issue of being able to tell you are going second, but that can be resolved by having well, some effects require the battle phase. But here's a problem: if your cards require the battle phase to function, then you have absolutely no place for the most part going first. So having additional plays in the battle phase might potentially help. I'm thinking. Not having like any useful effects for going first, or any usable effects going first to begin with, makes a deck just unplayable. Like Warrock, I guess, like technically Neuron and Makanko, the boards they set up are kind of just terrible. For like one interaction or two, sometimes, which is not hefty at all, not really good. Requiring the battle phase to function is kind of awkward, but if you don't require the battle phase to function, it's kind of hard somewhat for the game to like know what turn is it, right? So things that require the battle phase, like for example, evenly, you know, well, everything I'm going to say here is just going to be true, right? Evenly matched, because it requires the battle phase, means that it is only usable on turns after the first turn. So it's not necessarily only usable by the going first player. But technically the going first player cannot use it on the first turn, but the going second player can use it on their first turn because they'll have a battle phase to actually activate evenly. And even after evenly resolves, there will be no battle phase, and therefore your opponent will most likely live and have another turn to maybe do something. So all those things, absolutely true. And those are like some qualities related to mostly like battle phase. And another thing that's not even worth doing, might as well throw that out there, but like if you want to abuse damage step, that's not even that fully doable. Well, it depends. Well, technically, if you were against Cool Tune, abusing battle phase would be useful because the Zalin and Cool Tune RS cannot activate in damage step for multiple reasons. So firstly, they only negate effects, not activation. Secondly, this only activates in main phase. And also for Zalin to actually be able to be activatable in those situations, you would need something activatable in damage step, and then for Zalin to technically chain on top of that, kind of. Well, it depends on the exact like damage step effect and all that, but general idea here is that, well, you need some advantage, and that advantage for going second, it has to be relatively consistent. So if you only have an advantage against certain decks, it's not going to be that great, right? So for example, if we had to deal with a Baron negate, then we just kind of get cooked, right? Because Baron can just negate whatever card we activate. So that's a problem. But if we had something like, let's say, a Kaiju type effect, where we tribute over our opponent's monster in order to special summon it, well then we need a monster to tribute, and if we don't, we can't play the game. But I mean, if that's like an additional effect, it makes a little bit more sense, and it's not going to be as terrible. So something like subtle, like the only example of, well, in terms of impact, what I would want is something like a kind of Regenesis, but a little bit more consistent. Like the level of impact on these cards, they are fairly fair in my opinion. So let's see, where is Sage? Well, Warrior's fine. If a monster with 2500 or 2500 original attack or defense is on the field, you can just special summon a few of your Regenesis guys, and this of course includes your opponent's cards. So not too oppressive, but still useful to be able to do in some cases. So like in terms of like what this is doing, I think that this would be nice for just the going second deck in general, to additionally be able to summon your cards if your opponent controls some cards. But if they don't control any cards, I don't think I should be entirely locked out of summoning my cards, if that makes sense. But also, if I do summon my cards, I still want to be like incentivized to use them in a going second way. So I don't want to go first for some reason, and I would prefer going second. So why would I prefer going first? If I had Regenesis, right? I mean, technically you can activate these cards just fine going second. So assuming your opponent does have 2,500 guys for you to special summon your guys, why wouldn't I just want to start and kind of combo and set up my traps, right? So kind of like moot point here. So what could we do? I mean, the main pain point is just being able to establish that our cards do something, but it has to be specifically when we are going second. So I think it's kind of terrible if we require a battle phase for our cards to function altogether, so that sucks. It also sucks if our cards just don't work at all. Like, we can't even activate any cards. That's awful. If we wanted to just set up too hard going first, then there's no point in going second. So what kind of advantages? Well, I guess there's the fact that the game in the card text has a hard time establishing like a card should only be able to be used going second or that kind of thing. You kind of have to have it kind of hidden, not in plain text, you know? So for example, I guess we can say like with Cool Tune, technically, the removal effects for the most part should only be useful, like specifically the removal effects like not this, mix effect here to pop or some of the Draco Tail effects to pop. They're only like getting their mileage when your opponent controls a card, and they'll only usually happen if you're going second or on the second turn when these cards are activatable. So it doesn't directly say it on these cards, but for the most part, like the removal effect here is only useful on turn 2 and above. Because for the most part, on turn 1, assuming you are the Cool Tune player here, your opponent shouldn't control a monster for the most part, so you shouldn't be able to do the removal effect, I guess. So technically, Cool Tune is somewhat a going second deck in a really weird way, right? Where they go from having 2 card effects to like 3 card effects on most of their cards. So that's like kind of good, but we still have the issue of Cool Tune being like a deck where why would I want to go second when I can just go first? So it's more like a deck that goes first that can additionally go second, not so much a going second deck that can also go first, if that makes sense. Like in terms of like the going first play for Tenpai, you literally just made Seals Pass, which is, yeah, that's absolutely nothing, isn't it? So what kind of elements would we want for a deck like that? I'm thinking something along the lines of, right now, well, I'm not 100% sure on the trigger conditions and all of that stuff and the card text, but I guess you'd think that stuff up later. Just, I guess, tributing your opponent's cards, probably, for your summons, I think, is probably decent. So something like, maybe we have some card that gives you an additional normal summon or something, and on the card text of our card, it should say something like, you can tribute summon this card using one card your opponent controls, so that would be like any of their back row cards if I wanted. Just something like that would be kind of nice. That kind of effect, I guess, that would be like when you would normal summon something like an M-Pen with Laundries and the Unexplored Winds, allowing you to tribute your opponent's cards and stuff. I think that'd be pretty good, I think. And then if your opponent doesn't control cards, I guess you can just tribute your own monsters that do something. If your opponents, or I mean, if your cards do like a little bit too much, it'll be annoying. So I think yeah, I got it. So your monsters probably should not have any negates on them. Instead, they could have stuff like quick effect removal, which is fine. Like quick effects and a card your opponent controls the graveyard is fine. On summon, destroy cards, that kind of thing would be fine. If we had a negate, it could be like if this card is normal summon using a card your opponent controls, negate all of your opponent's face-up cards or something. That would be okay in general. Like, it wouldn't be my preferred way to do things, but that'd be okay, I guess. One thing we could do to make that really effective is on the summon. If I am tribute summoning one of my guys and one of my opponent's guys, I should be able to just chain block the on summon effect. And then if it's like widespread removal, then that gets chain blocked, so it's really hard to kind of deal with. It's not like literally impossible to deal with because you could technically like do stuff like imperm on that monster attempting to activate and whatnot. But if you had a Baron, that'd be able to, in theory, play around the Baron. But you do only have like one additional. Well, no, you have one normal summon in general, and then if there was an effect that granted you an additional normal or continuous, that would actually make the deck too terrible to play because your opponent just will shotgun everything you do, which in general would suck. So I guess it would be better if you just made it special summon condition, kind of like a kaiju, and kind of give up on that idea just simply because you can't really give yourself extra normal summons in like a effective way for going second, purely because it's going second, right? That's a problem. There's also the fact that you're always going to be playing into established endboard, so you have to do something that's like a little bit unfair. So you have to have at least, to some extent, like one or two kind of unfair cards to deal with your opponent's like 9 interruption, right? You do need some honesty, otherwise like your deck becomes unbeatable if all of your cards are just unfair cards. Like, for example, we just drop Super Poly into Droplet into Dark Ruler no more, or whatever, with like a Raigeki. So somehow, like, or maybe even evenly in this case becomes like the most honest card because that's somehow the thing you have the most weights to kind of interact with. So I guess it's also important to somewhat be able to interact with your opponent and for your opponent to be able to interact with you. But like the issue is if they're able to interact with you like too much, then it's miserable because well, they have 9 interactions because they went first. So something to do with that's kind of annoying, right? Oh, what if we just didn't remove our opponent's cards at all? What if we just maybe took our opponent's cards straight up instead as part of our interaction? I think that'd be kind of cool. So that's kind of like Hecka Hands territory. But if we're going second and we can take our opponent's monster like with one of our card effects, I think that'd be pretty solid. Especially if we could like chain block it and guarantee that we're able to at least snatch steal one card. Even if we had like 3 snatch steals, like maybe 2 of them you can actually reasonably stop, maybe 1 of them is going to be very, very hard to stop. I think that'd be fair because you can stop the other 2, and I can still trade a little bit. If I steal one of your guys, I can take that card's interaction and then use that interaction to trade off some of your interaction. So yeah, I think that would be like relatively fair. Well, yeah, one of the things that I'm really that I'm really focusing on here is just that, going second, like, the problem is it's hard to play going second kind of like honestly, kind of in a fair way, because you have to play a lot of like dishonest cards to kind of equalize how many interactions your opponent has versus like your straight up hand cards. Otherwise, like, well, if we just had like 5 map pack circulars, then we just keep activating cards until our opponent runs out of interactions, and then we just full combo from there. And that wouldn't be very honest, wouldn't be that interesting. If we played cards that essentially super polyed our opponent's entire board away, that's not really fair either, because our opponent can't do anything and they have like no interactions to do anything with. So yeah, I mean, just making a going second deck have function is already like difficult enough, and then to make it actually balance the cat fair, that is kind of an insane hurdle. I guess you do have this option as well, where we make the deck able to do a lot of kind of turn zero plays. In fact, how about this? You do have some card effects that you can do on your turn, but most of the card effects will be like during your opponent's turn. So like maybe I can only special summon this card from hand on my opponent's turn, and this will special summon to like my board and do things. I think that might be kind of a fair-ish way to maybe make going second a little bit more like a going second deck, a little bit more fair, a little bit balanced. But there's like going to be problems with this as well, where essentially if this goes too hard, then essentially we are more or less the going first player now, despite it not being our turn, and that makes our deck kind of unfair in that way. And then we still have the issue of like the coin flip deciding the winner pretty hard. So the mirror for that deck would be terrible. But having some going zero play or turn zero plays, I think should change things. Depends how extreme it is, I suppose. If the going, like, if we set up interactions immediately and completely blow our opponent out of the water here, you know, just like obliterate them before they can really do anything, or make them completely unable to set up anything, that's pretty unfair. But we want to do stuff on our opponent's turn in general. So maybe if our opponent activates a monster effect, we're able to activate a monster effect. I think that'd be a little more fair. So we're not like triggering everything at once and then ending on like, I guess for example, like Rukalos with 2 shufflers in the graveyard, plus other nonsense. Yeah, that'd be a little bit more fair. So yeah, that could be possible. Maybe a trigger would require like, or one of your effects to play on your opponent's turn might require your opponent to control an extra deck monster or something. So until they control an extra deck monster, maybe you can't actually go into one of your big interruptions, whatever that might be. Some kind of condition, I guess, really. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.